Welcome to another exciting episode of Rogue Finances and Life, where we are life and financially sound. For today's episode, in today's program, I have a guest, Mr. William Glass. He is the CEO and co-founder of Ostrich and a host of Silicon Alley podcast. His mission is to improve global financial well-being. Ostrich mobile app addresses financial literacy deficits by creating game-like social community and accountability around money. The key is tackling the emotional sale of money and creating strong money habits. Prior to starting Ostrich, William worked at an AI market research company in New York City. Additionally, William led sales teams at Gartner Research, where they work with the leadership teams of tech startup from pre-revenue to $250,000 million in revenue. So without further ado, here's Mr. William Glass.
Thanks, Jesus. I'm excited to be here. Appreciate you having me on today.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you. You're welcome, and thank you for being available. So I see that you are the co-founder of Ostrich, and you also are the host of Silicon Alley podcast. So tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we developed at Ostrich, we've developed a financial habit building app to help people build a secure financial foundation. And sort of, I guess, a little bit on my background. So growing up, I had saw multiple members of my family file bankruptcy. Parents' relationship fell apart due to financial stress, and just saw how money, finances can control our health, happiness, and sense of self-worth. And just have been really interested personally for a long time, and got focused on personal finance when I was in high school and then throughout college, and ended up after college, did a Fulbright scholarship and taught English over in Thailand for a year. And that was exciting, but only was paid a very small stipend, but still like $400 or $500 a month, and still managed to save money on that amount while living over in Thailand, and then ended up in the software industry, as you said, with Gartner. And that's where I got exposed to tech, and then ended up working in the startup world, and had been wanting to solve something in the personal finance space, similar to you, Jesus, having this passion to help people when it comes to money and finances. And that's where I reconnected with my old friend from college, Andrew Holliday, who went the investment banking and finance route in New York, and we reconnected and started Ostrich as a way to help people build that secure financial foundation.
That sounds great. So that is really good. Or just like you say, I have a passion to help people with their finances. We actually teach people how to build what is called a strong financial house. And we start out from life insurance, which is the foundation. And then we show them how to get out of debt. We show people how to create 3 to 6 months emergency fund, college funds, retirement. Yeah, we do pretty much. The only thing we don't help people with is with GoFundMe. If anything, we show people how to not do a GoFundMe.
Yes, right. Yeah, exactly. Help people avoid having to use GoFundMe, right? That's the aim. Ensure they're secure financially.
Exactly. So now, how do you build a tech product if you're not technical?
Yeah, so great question. So neither my co-founder or I know how to code. We're not software engineers. And so building a software product, so Ostrich is an app. It's on iOS and Android, on mobile devices. is a challenge for sure. And the conventional wisdom is, go find somebody that is technical and bring them on as a co-founder. Either that or go outsource. And we didn't really like any of those options because one, we didn't know a bunch of coders or anyone that we could bring on that we were comfortable with. And when you start a company, it's like getting married. You're in it for the long haul, 10 plus years. And so you don't want to just, jump in bed with the first person that you meet or someone that you've met a couple times, maybe at some meetups or networking events. And so we ended up finding something called no code, these no code tools, which are essentially like drag and drop builders. So if you're familiar, some of the audience may be familiar, but there's these website builders that make it really easy to build websites, like Wix, Squarespace, even WordPress to some degree. But there's these websites, and they've now moved into mobile apps. So there's different platforms where you can essentially drag and drop designs, and they've got some stuff pre-built, and you can create pretty robust experiences. And so that's actually how we started with Ostrich. The very first version of the app, I hacked together, learning this stuff, watching YouTube videos and scrolling through forums and things like that, and ended up pushing something out there so that we could test the concept.
That sounds awesome. So now, what gaps do you see in the FinTech market?
Yeah, so I think the key thing, right, like personal finance, there's a lot of players, and when you think about FinTech specifically, there's so many different tools and products and platforms out there. Whether you look at like, dashboarding apps like Mint, or you look at credit building apps like Credit Karma, there's a lot of tools, and there's neobanks and solutions that help you pay off debt or focus just on savings. And then you've got Robinhood on investing. But what we notice is that all of these products are, they're tools, right? They're sharper tools, but they're still not teaching anybody how to wield them and providing that pathway, right? Like, Jesus, you talked about that it's important to help build this foundation with your clients and the people that you work with. And none of these products really focus on that. They have tools that will help you at certain layers, but there's nobody really providing that guidance. And so that's the key insight. And what we saw missing is that there's this action piece that's missing. You've got literacy, you've got a ton of education, you've got all these tools, but how do I know where I am today and how to get to where I want to be? I don't know which tools I need to use. And unfortunately, a simple Google search is not going to solve it. And so that's really the gap when it comes to the personal finance space that we saw with Ostrich, and why we jumped in.
That is very interesting. Now, I see you have that word FinTech. Well, we one of the people that we associated with, they created this it's a business card that it goes on your phone. You put on the
the background or the screen or
your lock screen.
On
You
your
put
lock
on your
screen,
lock screen, and then if I want to pass out my business card to somebody, all they have to do is scan the barcode, and my business card goes onto their phone. And we have one thing that we call FinPath, but for us, Fin stands for financial intelligence number.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Yeah, the financial intelligence number, right? So that's the to help people figure out financial freedom, right? If I'm not mistaken, is that the purpose
Yes,
of the
sir.
number?
So basically, yeah, financial freedom. So what it does is once you get our business card, once you go through the whole process, then you answer some questions. I will get the email knowing what kind of financial needs you have, and then we can just get together. And now when we do get together and sit down, all I have to do is tackle those, not problems, but those issues that you have with your finances. And we don't have to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure out how to help you because you already gave me the information.
Yeah, it's absolutely key. So it's interesting. We've a little different, but one of the things that we developed was a financial health score that isn't it's to get a baseline of like where somebody is from
Mhm.
just like health perspective, financially, and then you're able to see how you compare to other people. So you can filter by age, location, other demographic information, and just kind of get an idea of like where you are today. And to your point, it's super helpful, right? Because if you don't know what the needs are, or and like that's a big challenge, at least that I'm sure you hear from folks as well, is like people just don't know where they are. And
Exactly.
it's interesting, you find that some people are in really great financial positions but don't know it and are super stressed and anxious, and you have folks on the opposite end who are actually not in a great financial place but have no clue and have no care in the world. So it's how do you like help people, right? Because you don't want to add additional stress, but how do you help the people that are actually in a decent spot take a deep breath, relax, and focus on the next kind of big goals? And then the folks that maybe aren't in a great position, help them avoid some potential pitfalls that could happen if they don't make changes or start to take steps to improve their financial situation.
That's exactly right. So now, where do you see the future of FinTech going, being?
Yeah, so I think that there's right now there's some interesting things that are happening in the space, and what we're seeing a lot of is more of this like human element, right? Like talked about the tools, numbers are a big piece, obviously, of personal finance, right? Like when you think about it, you think of spreadsheets and budgets and
Mhm.
numbers and all that. But I think what's been missing, and this is something that I'm seeing a bigger trend in the fintech space, is bringing more of that human element, right? Because there's actually a stat out there that shows that only about 15 to 20% of the population will ever use a budget, right? There's some people that really love it, but the majority of people won't. So how do you reach those folks and how do you support them? It doesn't mean that they can't be um, better off financially, but you've got to take a more human element. And I think that's what we're starting to see, is this sort of human element that's being applied in the personal finance space. Is a key trend. And then if you look broader, there's obviously a whole nother conversation that we could have about like Web3 and all that stuff that's going on over there, decentralization. But I think when it specifically with personal finance, we're seeing this kind of emotional side, the human side of finance being brought in, which I think is much needed.
Sure. You're right. So you had mentioned personal finance, and you had mentioned emotional. So what do we get wrong when it comes to personal finances?
Yeah, so I think that touched on a little bit, right? It's part of it is that we get so focused on the numbers and how do we optimize this little thing? Is it cutting out the coffee? Is it saving a little bit here, a little bit there, without like taking a deep breath and looking at the bigger picture, right? Because a $5 purchase in one area could actually be add a ton of value to somebody's life and health, and that same $5 purchase somewhere else might not. And so I think being able to recognize that, because it's all different, right? At the core, finance is all very similar, right? It's very straightforward. You know, bring in more than you spend, right? Invest, make sure that you're thinking about the future. Like you do those things right, that's the basics. But then when you start to add in that emotional layer, and trying to really get deeper in, is like, what do you optimize for? What's going to make Jesus the happiest, right? If I've got a certain amount of money to spend each month, is it traveling? Is it buying really good
Mhm.
food because that's what really brings value and adds value to your life? Is it tithing, right? Is it giving to your community and giving back to your faith? So I think there's all of these different things that we don't talk about, but are really, really important outside of just the spreadsheet and just outside of the numbers.
Exactly, and I agree with that. Now, one of the things that I had found out when I'm sitting down across somebody that there's a potential client or somebody I'm getting ready to help financially, what I found out is that by asking them questions and asking them about themselves and having them tell you more about themselves and getting to know more, to getting to know them better, then you can serve them better because um, when I, and for me, when I take away the mentality of how much am I gonna get from helping this person and more, and how much can I help this person, because now I'm more focused on that person and not so much and what I can do. So I have learned more about that person, and we've been able to help that person needs better.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a much better experience, right? You're taking the time to actually, listen and do what's best for the other person on the other side versus just saying, how do we optimize this for, whatever my own benefit or whatever, whatever will optimize everything without really understanding the needs, wants, and desires of the person across the table.
It's what is called having that fiduciary mindset or the best interest mindset.
Exactly. Yeah. Fiduciary, right? Very
Mhm.
important if you're, yeah, when you think about financial advisors or financial folks is making sure that they've got that fiduciary responsibility. And if you're not familiar, I'm sure your audience probably is very familiar with fiduciary, but it's like a legal responsibility to put the client's best interest at heart over the individuals. Because some people
Exactly.
will think that they're talking to a financial advisor, but they're really talking to a stockbroker, right? Or somebody like that, or, just insert any other kind of broker, right? And they're only they don't have a duty to necessarily do what's in your best interest, whereas fiduciary does have a legal responsibility and you have legal rights where if they don't do that, that you can go essentially go to take them to court,
Yes, sir.
and
That's true.
and yeah, but you're protected that way.
Yes, sir. So I believe you already mentioned it, but can you mention again how do you come up with the idea of ostrich?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of told you my story, right? Really, what I saw growing up and wanting to really solve something important in the personal finance space because there's 119 million Americans today, adults that have less than $1,000 in a savings account, and 84 million of those have less than 300. There's all of these just we're not doing a great job, right? There's all of these stats that we could quote in, whether it's savings rates, whether it's the amount of debt, and it's just we don't have great personal financial one education. We also don't have anyone that really owns and is responsible in our society for financial wellness. There's this, it's not the school system's responsibility. It's not the government's responsibility. It's not private industry's responsibility. It kind of falls on the individual. And unfortunately, if you don't come from a family that understands this stuff, or you don't have a mentor or somebody that steps in your life, it's tough. It's really tough to get ahead. And once you kind of fall behind, it's really hard to dig yourself out of that hole. And so our focus was on how do we provide better outcomes that actually change things for the better. And our key insight was I found this research study, which I thought was just eye-opening, is that we tend to think that financial literacy is the solution. Oh, we just need more financial literacy. If everybody's financially literate, that would solve the problem. Well, unfortunately, this research study showed that financial literacy changes behavior 0.1%. 0.1%, which means that just because you understand something doesn't mean that you will do it, right? How much of your audience, how much of the population, the entire world pretty much knows how to get six-pack abs, right? Like you eat better, you work out, and over time you'll eventually get six-pack abs. But what percentage of the population actually has a six-pack? Well, that's because knowing isn't the hard part, it's the doing. And so that's kind of our key insight is how do we make it so easy and simple to take actions and improve? And that's really why we developed Ostrich and focused on habit building. So we have some financial literacy that's built in, but enough to give somebody confidence in what the next step is, but not so much that they become overwhelmed and don't take action. So that's kind of how we came up with the idea, was looking at this problem space and also looking at like behavioral economics. Social accountability is a key component. So having groups of people working towards the same goals together, you're more likely to stick to them, and share wins. It's a lot more rewarding when you can see other people have success and you can have success and share that with someone. So that's sort of how we came up with the concept and where we're focused.
That sounds great. Now, what about the name? How come the name ostrich?
Yeah, great question. So funny story, Jesus. So we were struggling to find a name. Like it's just one of those challenging things. For whatever reason, it's really hard to name stuff. I'm sure you experienced that too when you're thinking of like, what do I call this podcast, right? Like you try a bunch of variations, you see what's taken, and for some reason, it's just hard to name stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right.
And so we essentially my co-founder and I were really struggling to figure out what to call the company. And we were at a friend's birthday party, and we were just sitting there on GoDaddy looking up every terrible combination of fin lit, fin fit, fin that. And at one point, finally, I looked up over at my co-founder, and he had on a button-down shirt that had little tiny ostriches all over it. And we just jokingly threw that out as a name. Oh, what if we called it Ostrich? We laughed. And then we thought for a second, and we're like, wait, hold on a second. Like, Ostrich, we're helping people pull their heads out of the sand when it comes to money and finances, build a large nest egg. This could work. Ostrich, like, we want people to live a rich life. So this is great. And so that's how we ended up coming up with the name Ostrich, and it just sort of fell into our laps.
It sounds great. Well, for me, the name of Rogue Finances and Life came from, I'm a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, how can I incorporate Star Wars into finances? So I remember the movie Rogue. So I said, well, hey, Rogue, because when you think about it, a person that's rogue don't follow a set pattern. So we teach you, we help you with your finances. We just don't follow a set pattern.
Exactly. Yeah. Rogue One. Yeah, I like that. Rogue Finances, the Star Wars. I
That's how
actually rewatched them recently, so
okay.
I'm a big Star Wars fan as well.
Okay, great. So so you bootstrap or raise venture capital?
Yeah, so we bootstrapped, right? So we use that no code tool I mentioned to kind of get the first version, and so we didn't, spent very little money, and which makes it a little more challenging to build startups. But when you're a first time founder, and you're not a coder technical person, it's hard to get people to write you a check pre-product when you don't have anything built yet. So we bootstrapped. And then earlier this year, we raised a little bit of capital, and we're getting ready to go out. As I was kind of mentioned before we hit record, we're getting ready to raise a round here shortly. So we've gone down both paths. Did the bootstrapping for a while, and now about to raise venture capital.
That's great. Now, when you were talking earlier about like helping people and how we talk about being financially literate, it's not the whole answer, it's just a little bit of an answer. It came to mind as a lot of times we see athletes, they get out of college, get a giant paycheck from the pros, but because nobody was there to teach them what to do, you see them, after the whatever pro career, you see them struggling because there was nothing there to show them exactly what to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a problem, right? You see the same thing too with like the lottery, right? Lottery winners often tend to be worse off a year after they won the lottery than before, because, right? Like, it's kind of like a leaky bucket analogy, right? If you've got a leaky bucket, adding more water, as much water as you add isn't going to solve the problem. It's all going to eventually leak out until you plug the holes. So financial literacy obviously is a key piece of that, and ensuring that people are literate, but also that they, we result in better outcomes. So if somebody does end up getting a big payday, making it easier for them to have success. So
exactly. So with that being said, we noticed that people make money mistakes. So what are the biggest money mistakes?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of money mistakes. I can share one of mine. I bought a property that I lived in Florida, and as you know, there are a lot of hurricanes that tend to hit Florida, and there was one that hit. It didn't have any damage to the house, luckily, but there was a big, like, in-ground shed that was there. Like, this wasn't one that you just bought from the store. Like, it was built up and on a slab and everything, and this huge tree fell on it. And like crushed the roof, but like it was still kind of standing. And so I had somebody just, there were other trees all over the neighborhood. So I had some people that came and cut it down, that I'd found. And then they're like, hey, we're contractors. We can actually, fix this for you if you want. And I said, oh, sure. Yeah. Didn't do any reference checks. Didn't, check to see if they were actually licensed or any of that stuff. And they ran away with like $1,200 and did a little bit of work here and there. And then I still had to go get the thing torn down and all this stuff. So that was one that was like a big, silly, like, I can't believe I did that, dumb money mistake. But yeah, that's one of my personal ones. What about you? Do you have any money mistakes, Jesus, that come to mind?
A lot. I guess for me, money mistake will be just the same situation in a way, but just purchasing something without really being able to do the whole research, not knowing exactly the value that you're gonna get for whatever you're purchasing. That's a big mistake. Just buying something. And also I believe that making decisions, financial decisions on emotions can be a big mistake.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? Like if you're in a high emotional state, big life event or something happened, whether it's good or bad. Yeah, usually making decisions at a height of emotional time doesn't yield the best results.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. So now, why is social accountability in finances so important?
Yeah, so this is it goes kind of back to that gym analogy, right? If you've got a personal trainer or even just a gym buddy that you go to the gym with, on the days that you don't feel like showing up, you're more likely to show up because there's somebody else there that's expecting you to be there. And that social accountability, there's a research study that shows that when you combine a regular weekly check-in with a social accountability partner, you end up increasing your likelihood of achieving that goal by 95%. So you almost double your chances of achieving something just by simply having a regular progress check-in with an accountability partner. And unfortunately, because we as a society tend not to talk about money and finances, it can be shameful, emotional. It's one of the areas that we tend not to do this. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've applied this in Ostrich, is understanding that it's such a powerful way to achieve goals. Well, if we create a safe space, we hide numbers, we obfuscate some of that stuff, this can be a great way to help people work towards goals that can be tough on the financial side. So I think social accountability, you're seeing this more and more across personal finance, but also just in other areas as well, that this accountability piece, social accountability piece, is super helpful and powerful.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, because just like a lot of the people that we work with, some of our business partners, and some of the most successful people that that I have talked to and I have been coached with, it's very important to have somebody to hold you accountable. And because a lot, like you say, you should do it, but if there's nobody there, if you don't have that mentality that somebody's going to hold me accountable, then you might just put it off.
Exactly. Yeah, it's easy to be like, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do that next week, or next month. It's not that important. Oh, I'll get to it. And then, years and years go by, and whatever that thing is, you never get to.
And then you find yourself just with the same spot where you just started.
Exactly.
So what does a future full of financial literate people looks like?
Yeah, so I think this is something that's really important, is that money is connected to just everything in our life, whether we like it or not, right? It's just connected to everything. You can't operate in this world without it. And not having it puts people in vulnerable positions, whether that's because you're not able to afford some basic necessities, or something major from a life event happens and you're not able to deal with that emergency. Something happens to a loved one. It limits your options by not being in a strong financial situation. And so the inverse of that is that if we have a society that is financially literate, but also is financially secure, now all of a sudden we're able to eliminate so many societal problems. Imagine being in a workplace where you're being discriminated against for whatever reason, right? And if you're in a vulnerable position and you're not in a financial position where you can't leave and you need that job, you might put up with something that you shouldn't. So there's all of these downstream consequences And there's the number one stressor year over year in the U.S. is financial stress, and we know that stress causes real health problems, mental health problems. It causes emotional challenges. It has this huge effect on our health, wealth, and happiness. And so imagine not removing some of those things, and we would not live in a perfect world, still far from it, but we would live in a much more secure world, a more equitable world. And I think it would just ultimately change society for the better. So that's my vision, and that's why I think it's such a powerful world to live in, and something that we should really strive for.
Yeah, I totally agree with you because, like you said, like we know, that's what we're trying to do. I try to help as many people as I can to the point where they can. It's not so much about being rich. It's more about creating a situation in life where they are more than comfortable, where they don't have to, because you are right. Not having the money that you want to have is very stressful, and then with stress, a lot of times you end up you're not, if you're not happy, the world will know it.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, you want people to be in a strong position. They don't, you're not going to be the next, you don't have to be the next billionaire, the next whoever, but just getting yourself to that baseline can really help you and your family and your loved ones, and help you kind of reorient your life to the things that you care about. And I think that right there is powerful.
I definitely agree. I agree 100% with that. So really, pretty much this is my time right here. But I really thank you for coming on. Any final thoughts that you would like to share, and how people can get in contact with you?
Yeah. Well, Jesus, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate you having me on the Rogue Star Wars themed finance podcast. It's great. I love that. I love that connection there. So I really appreciate you having me on and asking such thoughtful questions, and glad to be connected with somebody else that really cares about ensuring people are well off financially. I think that my kind of last words for the audience is, think about your relationship with money. I think that's one of the first places you can start. Is how does it make you feel when you talk about money, think about money? Who do you talk to money about? And understanding that will connect to what emotions you have. And I think it's a great place to start to kind of understand. And then obviously, there's plenty of things that you can do to continue to improve. But I think that one's a really important one when we talked about emotions. And if you want to get in contact with me, my email is william@getostrich, getostrich.com, getostrich.com. And I'm happy to talk about finances. We've got a financial health score that everyone can take. Sounds like it's similar, but a little bit different than I think the fin number that you were talking about, Jesus. So if anybody's interested in getting that, you can visit getostrich.com, and you can get your financial health score for free, and kind of see where you are today.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'll make sure that I will put that in the description. So, well, this is all the time we have for today. We want to thank our guest, Mr. William Glass, to be here and educating us on finances. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, that you will learn something from the episode. And until next time, continue to be blessed.